Yo, Misplaced Monk here. Captain Marvel / Rogue. Origin of their beef. Here we go. The ongoing conflict between Captain Marvel and Rogue began on a foggy summer night in San Francisco. We see Carol entering her place of residence when suddenly she is ambushed by a female we know today as Rogue. Once Carol regained her composure, she would become Miss Marvel, and a battle ensued. Their fight would take them all the way to the Golden Gate Bridge. It was at this point in the battle that Rogue would remove her gloves and grab Miss Marvel by the face, activating her mutant powers of absorption. At this point, Carol would have felt the energy being drained from her body. Carol, panicked by this point, would fight desperately to break Rogue's grip. But the harder Carol fought, the weaker she became. During this struggle, Rogue would hold on to Carol longer than she normally would hold on to her victims. Because of this, Rogue would completely drain Carol of all of her powers and memories, making the absorption permanent. This is how Rogue would gain her abilities of flight, superhuman strength, and increased durability. Fearing that she had actually killed Carol, Rogue would toss Carol off the Golden Gate Bridge. At the same time this was happening, Spider-Woman, aka Jessica Drew, by chance happened to be flying by and caught Carol before she hit the water. After swimming to shore, Spider-Woman would bring Carol to the hospital. Carol had no ID on her, so for a while she was considered a Jane Doe. The attending doctor would tell Spidey that physically the woman was fine, but her mind was all but non-existent. Her mind was functioning at the level of a newborn infant. A detective was able to identify Carol through fingerprint analysis. The detective would go on to say that the attacker left nothing behind, so the best chance of catching the attacker is Carol's testimony. The doctor would reveal to the detective that there was nothing that could be done. All they can do is watch and wait and hope for the best. Either she'll recover or she won't. Spider-Woman, hearing this, would decide to give Professor X a call to see if he could do something. Professor X would receive Spider-Woman's call and tell her that he'd be to her in San Francisco by the mid-afternoon. Once he arrived, he would begin his telepathic evaluation of Carol. He would inform Jessica, through telepathy, that Carol's conscious mind had been completely erased. He would go on to say that even though she's a blank slate, her condition wasn't hopeless. Xavier would say that many of her critical memories and personality traits were buried deep within her subconscious. With time and effort, Xavier believed that he would be able to bring these to the surface. During his examination, Xavier was able to find a residual image of Carol's attacker, which was Rogue. Rogue's assault on Mrs. Marvel wasn't random. In fact, it was part of a calculated attack planned by the leader of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, known as Mystique. Rogue was to attack key members of the Avengers, gain their powers, and then put them out of action. If successful, Rogue and Mystique would be able to break out their fellow Brotherhood members from jail. Rogue would travel to Avenger Mansion and immediately get to work. Using Mrs. Marvel's powers and memories, Rogue would take out Captain America. She would then drain Cap of his powers and memories, then toss him through the window of the mansion. At the same time at Stark Tower, Mystique, disguised as Janet Prim, aka the Wasp, would take out Iron Man. Mystique would attach a device to Iron Man's back that rendered his suit's power systems completely dysfunctional. Tony was frozen in place as he watched Mystique reveal her true form. Mystique would then contact Rogue and tell her to proceed with Plan A. "I pity your friends, Shellhead," Mystique would say. Like you and Captain America, they'll never know what hit them. Back at the mansion, Rogue began her one-woman assault against the Avengers. Rogue would attack and drain the mighty Thor, using the combined strength of Ms. Marvel and Captain America. Rogue would then go on to take out Vision with one punch and toss Wonder Man into the dumpster. Rogue would then flee the scene, telling the remaining Avengers she'd see them again real soon. Hawkeye would ask Spider-Woman what brought her to the East Coast. She would tell him that she's investigating the attempted murder of Carol Danvers. Inside the mansion, Beast would inform the team that he'd be able to track Rogue. Carol's hybrid Kree-human metabolism broadcasts a unique energy aura. So in theory, Rogue would produce the same aura. Sure enough, Beast was able to locate where Rogue was heading. Above Rikers Island, we see a jet flying over. Inside is Rogue and Mystique, whose goal is to free the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Rogue would then toss and immobilize Iron Man out of the jet directly into the prison's power supply. This would give the imprisoned Brotherhood members time to escape. The 4 members, Blob, Avalanche, Pyro, and Destiny, would then meet up with Rogue and Mystique and make a run for it. But it was too late, and the Avengers were already there, assembled, and closing in on them. A battle would ensue, which favored the Brotherhood due to Destiny's ability to see the future. Inside the main generator room, Spider-Woman was able to locate Iron Man. As he was telling her about the power inhibitor on his suit, Mystique, disguised as Nick Fury, would enter the room. Iron Man would see through this disguise, knowing that Nick was out of the country, and he would then tell Spider-Woman. Mystique would try to fire upon Spidey, but she was too quick. This would cause Mystique to flee the scene. Outside, Rogue would see Mystique fleeing and try to fly to her aid, but without warning, Rogue took a massive blast of energy to her back. It was Iron Man, thanks to Spider-Woman removing the inhibitor. Scarlet Witch would cast a hex that caused a massive explosion. Destiny would lose consciousness during that blast. Rogue would be caught by another blast from Iron Man, causing her to panic. Mystique, seeing the signs of defeat, had already boarded the jet and was taking off. She would tell Rogue to fly aboard, leaving the other Brotherhood members to be captured. Weeks after the battle, the Avengers would venture to Xavier's school for gifted youngsters. Carol had regained her consciousness thanks to Xavier, so the Avengers came to see her. They would exchange pleasantries, after which Hawkeye would ask about Marcus, to which Carol would reply that he is dead. Iron Man would say he was sorry and that the two of them made a good couple. He would then ask what he could do to ease the pain. Carol would then suddenly snap at him saying, "Didn't you do enough to cause it?" So to understand why Carol had no desire to see the Avengers and to know who this Marcus guy is, I'll have to recap you on why Carol was in San Francisco in the first place. Marcus was a being that lived in limbo. He found it lonely, so he lured Carol there, wooed her, and implanted his essence within her. When Carol returned to Earth, she would run through a 9-month term overnight and give birth to Marcus. He aged quickly and seemed to have a romantic hold over Carol. Marcus's presence on Earth, however, was disrupting time and causing chaos, so he had to return to Limbo. To the Avengers' surprise, Carol wanted to go with Marcus to Limbo, so with the help of Thor, the two of them left. That was the last time any Avenger saw Carol, so for the Avengers, they were confused as to why Carol seemed so angry. Carol would reveal that she never loved Marcus, and that Marcus made her fall in love with him via a machine that controlled her will. After the two of them went to Limbo, Marcus would would begin to age at a rapid rate. This was due to the fact that Carol gave birth to him while in this reality on Earth. His body couldn't handle limbo, so he aged to dust in a week's time. Once Carol was free of Marcus's mind control, she had learned enough of Marcus's secrets to transport herself home, then move to San Francisco. When asked why she didn't contact the Avengers, Carol would say, "I never wanted to see any of you again. I hated you because when I needed you most, you betrayed me." Wanda would apologize, saying she would give anything to change what happened. Carol would assure the group that she would be okay. 10 months after Carol's recovery, she still wasn't on good terms with the Avengers. On top of that, she was still having difficulty with her memories, and she still had yet to regain her powers back. So because of this, she decided to stay a little longer with the X-Men. After sparring with a group of space pirates known as the Starjammers, it is revealed that Carol's genetic makeup was altered to support the superpowers she would gain. Even though her powers were stripped away, the genetic alteration remained the same, making her still far superior to an ordinary human being. Carol would reveal that she got over losing her powers, but the way she lost them still hurts. We then come to the X-Men, who need a way inside the Pentagon to delete all mutant files. Why? Because a senator named Robert Kelly was going to use said files to hunt them down. Carol volunteered to help the X-Men using authentic military disguises. While en route to the file room inside the Pentagon, Carol happened to run into Rogue. When they saw one another, both women instantly were transported back to that night. It was a traumatic experience that scarred both women deeply. Rogue would then strike Carol with the intent to kill, but Carol would survive due to the aforementioned genetic alteration. Filled with anger, Carol would then take a soldier's firearm and recklessly fire upon Rogue. Bullets had no effect on Ms. Marvel, so naturally, Rogue was unharmed. Storm would separate the two of them with a great Arctic wind. As Carol fled the scene, she would say to herself, "When I saw Rogue, I couldn't help myself. She took from me everything that gave my life meaning. I don't know what hurts more, that or the fact that I'll never be able to make her pay for it." Shortly after the skirmish, Carol would head to the file room to delete the files. Unknown to her, she was being followed by Mystique, disguised as a Pentagon worker. Mystique would ambush Carol, now disguised as Nick Fury, firing a shot at her head. Thanks to Carol's reflexes, she was able to roll with the bullet so that it only grazed her head. Carol would then eventually choke Mystique unconscious, causing her to show her true form. Carol would then reveal that she knows that it was Mystique that sent Rogue after her in San Francisco. Mystique would then be apprehended by security while Carol was able to delete the mutant files. Once she regrouped with the X-Men, she felt that she had laid her ghost to rest and looked forward to starting life anew. The beef history picks up about 6 months later. At this point in Carol's life, she had been experimented on by the Brood, which unlocked her true potential known as Bionic. Carol hadn't visited her parents since the Rogue incident, so she went home. We next see Carol leaving the home of her parents after a visit. Her mom tells her that she notices that she seems different, but Carol would tell her that she's fine. After leaving, however, Carol would reveal that Charles Xavier was able to restore most of her memories after Rogue attacked her, but there wasn't any emotional attachments associated with them. Although she knows she once loved her parents, all she feels now is a vague affection for them. She would then say, "What's done is done," and although life as Carol was over, the life of Binary has begun. At the X-Men's headquarters, the team gets an unexpected visit from Rogue. Once inside, Professor X asks Rogue what she wants. She tells him to read her mind, but he reveals she possessed two diametrically opposing thought patterns, one of them alien, so reading her mind was impossible. Rogue then tells Xavier that she knows it's Carol's persona. She goes on to say that her powers are out of control. The slightest touch can trigger a transformation of personality. She can no longer discern which thoughts, memories, or feelings are actually hers. Although the majority of the team thinks Rogue is getting what she deserves, the professor tells the team to leave him with her. Storm would voice her concern about how dangerous Rogue can be, but Xavier could see that Rogue was too shaken to cause any harm. Xavier would then call the team back into the room and inform them that he believes Rogue is telling the truth. Because of this, he decided to admit her to the school and make her a probationary member of the X-Men. Storm would outright say no, stating that Rogue could not be trusted. At the same time this was happening, Carol, as Binary, arrived at the school. Not long after Carol entered the school, she would punch Rogue through the roof. Rogue would end up stopping near the Earth's moon before she could regroup. Confused as to what just happened, she flew back to confront the stranger. Once Rogue got back to Earth, Carol would get another shot in before Colossus stepped in and ended the battle. Xavier would tell Binary that Rogue was under his protection. "How can you say that, Charles?" Carol would reply. "You know better than anyone what she did to me." Storm would reveal that Rogue had been forgiven and that she was the newest member of the X-Men. As expected, Carol wasn't too pleased, and to Rogue's surprise, Carol revealed her face. Storm and the rest of the team would then tell Professor X they'll leave if Rogue stays. Xavier would then say that Rogue staying with them would be the best chance she has for a better life. Deny her and they condemn her outright, and that's something he'll never do as long as he lives. This would cause the X-Men to change their view. Carol, on the other hand, was unmoved. "What do you want from me, Charles? Understanding? Approval? I'll concede to one, but not the other. Rogue tore my life, my very soul, to shreds, and those scales can never be balanced." She would go on to say, "I have nothing to lose here, Charles. No real ties to break. That makes my decision easy. I'm not an X-Man, and all of a sudden, I'm glad." Carol and Rogue would meet up again years later in a storyline titled Doppelganger. A Carol from another universe would come to our universe, and then as soon as she came to this universe, she saw Rogue and attacked her immediately. Rogue would subdue the Doppelganger and bring her back to Carol's apartment, believing it was the Carol of this universe. Naturally, the real Carol was surprised to find Rogue and this Doppelganger in her apartment. Once the Doppelganger awoke, however, it was hell-bent on fighting Rogue, so a battle ensued. Carol would relieve the Doppelganger of consciousness by throwing a car at it, ending the battle. Rogue would use this brief moment of peace to tell Carol that there wasn't anything in her life she was more sorry about than what happened between them years ago. Carol remained silent as she and Rogue brought the Doppelganger to the X-Men headquarters for examination. Once the Doppelganger regained consciousness inside the lab, it revealed that it and the real Carol have a shared history, meaning that they have experienced the same things, just in parallel universes, including the trauma induced by Rogue. The Doppelganger would accuse the real Carol of being weak for forgiving this universe's Rogue. Those fighting words, of course, caused a battle to ensue between the real Carol and the Doppelganger. Rogue would try to step in and help the real Carol, but she just got in the way, causing the Doppelganger to get the upper hand. Frustrated, Carol would tell Rogue to stay out of the way. Rogue would try and plead with Carol, saying that she was just trying to help. But before Rogue could finish pleading her case, Carol would tell Rogue to shut up and kick her in the ribs so hard a few of them broke. It was at that time that the Doppelganger revealed to Carol that she had been to several different universes on purpose with the sole intent of killing every single Rogue, and then asked Carol to join her on this quest. Carol, of course, would reject this offer and proceed to battle the Doppelganger until she was again knocked unconscious. Feeling guilty for letting her emotions get the best of her, Carol would return to the mansion to check on Rogue's condition. Carol would try to apologize to Rogue and Beast, but the Beast would ask her to kindly leave. Once again, Carol was left wondering if she ever would be able to fully forgive Rogue for what she did to her. During the Avengers vs. X-Men series, 5 X-Men shared the power of the Phoenix, and the Avengers didn't like it. I'm just going over it briefly. There was a lot more to it than that. So they began to war. During this war, however, Rogue and Carol would again butt heads. Miss Marvel would try to approach Rogue and talk to her about the war. Rogue, believing that Miss Marvel was trying to ambush her out of revenge for draining her powers years ago, would preemptively strike. During this battle, it is revealed that Rogue no longer possesses Miss Marvel's powers. Feeling outmatched, Rogue would attempt to drain Miss Marvel's powers to even the playing field. Carol was shocked at the audacity of Rogue trying something like that and would begin to fight even harder, totally abandoning the idea of trying to reason with Rogue. Luckily, Rogue had the powers of Iceman and was able to freeze Carol in place, ending the battle. With the fighting over, however, Carol was able to explain why she was there. Carol wanted Rogue to really think about the fact that these mutants have the power of gods, and even though they're doing good now, there's a chance that if something made them upset, they would turn evil. Rogue would tell Carol that she thinks the Avengers are just jealous and calls Magik, one of the Phoenix Five, to take Carol to prison. Once Magik transported them to prison, however, Rogue realized this wasn't a regular prison. This was a living Hades, created by Magik to torture the prisoners, which were all Avengers. After seeing this, Rogue would finally begin to understand what Carol was talking about and try to free the Avengers. But of course, Magik would shut it down because she had the power of the Phoenix. Carol was put back into prison, and Rogue was sent to another dimension. The latest entry of this saga happened during the early issues of the 2019 Captain Marvel reboot. In this particular storyline entitled Re-Entry, Nuclear Man put up a force field around Manhattan's Roosevelt Island, trapping only women inside and rejecting men from entering. While trapped inside, Carol found out that Nuclear Man was able to capture Rogue. Nuclear Man, via a mind control collar, forced Rogue to fight Carol to the death. Carol would find herself in an uphill battle, however. At this point in Rogue's life, she was able to drain a person without skin-to-skin contact. The prize for the victor of this battle? They would have the honor of bearing Nuclear Man's children. During the battle, Carol could see that Rogue was trying to fight Nuclear Man's control. Carol would convince Rogue to drain her of her essence, but let her take over the body once she's absorbed. Rogue would agree, and suddenly the two of them fused. Nuclear Man, believing Rogue killed Captain Marvel, went to congratulate her, but to his surprise, Rogue/Carol broke the collar and began to attack him. Carol's consciousness and powers would return to her body eventually, and together, she and Rogue would defeat Nuclear Man. After freeing the other women and saving the day, Carol and Rogue would have a talk. Carol would admit to Rogue that they'll never be friends, but Rogue knows her better than anyone ever will, just like she knows Rogue better than anyone ever will. That being said, she would admit that she likes where they are in their current relationship. Rogue would agree, and the two would part ways with a handshake. And that was the origin story of the beef between Captain Marvel and Rogue. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching.